You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 103.
Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life. Hello there and welcome to the podcast. We're so happy you're here. Today, we are talking about a recent research that came out on mindfulness in middle school and the positive impact that it has on kids. But before we dive in, we would like to share today's sponsor, Little Love Home. Little Love Home creates sustainable, minimalist goods for you and your home, and it's handmade with love by a mom. And her newest line is beautiful. It is colorful. It has beautiful pieces for the classroom that could be easily incorporated in the classroom.
I love the handmade rope rainbows that she makes and her beautiful hanging baskets to put plants in. I can just envision that brightening up the classroom and being great in a calm corner or around a window. So many options.
I also love that she donates 5% of her net proceeds to Global Footprint Network, which is amazing. So when you're supporting her and her family, you're also supporting this organization.
Love it. Go check out her beautiful products at
littlelovehome.com and use the coupon code EduCalm10 to receive 10% off your first order. And that's EduCalme 10.
littlelovehome.com and use that coupon code. All right, let's get into this episode. I have been really looking forward to sharing this episode for a long time now.
Kaylee, the science gal.
So there's some recent research that has come out of MIT, two different research papers that came out around mindfulness in the classroom. And this is great because mindfulness is new enough in education that there aren't a ton of research papers out there. There's a lot more research done on adults, but it's more of an emerging field of study when it concerns children. So, the more research that comes out, the better. Before we talk about these specific research papers, though, I wanted to chat about the fact that we also collect a lot of data about our program and how EduCalm Classroom is working in the classroom. And the reason I want to share this is because what we've found is actually quite similar to what they found in these two research papers that came out of MIT. So we have noticed from the monthly feedback we get from EduCalm Classroom users some really specific themes. Teachers are saying that students are really getting better at recognizing and naming their emotions now that they're doing this daily mindfulness practice in their classroom using EduCalm Classroom. They're also noticing that students are learning strategies from this practice that they're then using more and more independently to manage their emotions. So that self-regulation piece is really improving for their students.
And it's the most beautiful thing to see.
Yes.
I know we've talked about this on the podcast before.
Yeah. And the fun thing that we're seeing, with this data that we're collecting, we're like, oh yeah, okay, we also saw that in our own classrooms. We saw it for ourselves. We wanted to create a program to help other teachers get these same results in their classrooms. And we're seeing that that's what's happening. So it's pretty awesome. Teachers are also saying that students are better able to advocate for their needs. So they're saying that when they're learning more about their emotions and their reactions to their emotions with this daily mindfulness practice. And so now when they're struggling to regulate on their own, they know how to ask for help from an adult. So instead of just having a meltdown when they're feeling really frustrated, they're able to articulate to their teacher, I'm feeling really frustrated. I need help. Can we do 5-finger breathing together? Or can you help me to calm down? So they're really able to vocalize their needs, which is so helpful.
And the more they do it, the more they are able to self-regulate is what we're seeing.
Exactly.
Like the more that they're aware, then it becomes something that they can do on their own.
Yeah. So it goes from, before, when it was just when the student was feeling a big emotion, they would, have a big reaction, to, okay, now there's a delay in that reaction where they're able to articulate that they need support. And then the next step is they get to the point where they don't need that support. They are ready to be able to use those breathing strategies or other calm down strategies that they've learned through the EdgeComm Classroom program on their own.
Now, this one is a big one for the classroom. We are seeing that students are more able to focus in class on a specific task, and they are able to stay focused for much longer periods of time.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that in my own classroom in grades 1 and 2. Amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's what every teacher wants to hear, right? The reduction of the need to support students with their emotional problems, let's say, is translating into also more class time for the academics.
That's right. Teachers are actually reporting that they get more academics done, and they're seeing faster progress in their students because they have so much less classroom management to do.
Mm-hmm. And they say too that when they're in the middle of a lesson or it's a work time and students are getting off task or aren't focused, they have the tools and the common vocabulary to be able to reset and say, okay, I'm noticing that, it's hard for you guys to focus right now. What can we do to refocus? And they understand that. So they're actually building those neural networks to be able to focus for longer, which is wonderful in the classroom.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing a lot of feedback about the fact that there are fewer conflicts in the classroom and stronger community and connection in the classroom. So by doing this mindfulness practice every day, students are learning to notice their emotions, regulate their emotions on their own using breathing strategies or whatever other strategies they've learned. And so they're bringing that into their interactions during recess or, during work times, where they're noticing during a conflict what their emotions are, and they're managing those emotions on their own before the conflict explodes. Or they're able to, talk it out better because they have the vocabulary and the language to talk about their emotions. So teachers love that they're putting out a lot less fires in their classroom, and students are better able to resolve conflicts.
So all of that are things that we are seeing, that our ambassadors are seeing. It's in the data. But also what this research from MIT also suggests.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Let's dive into that.
Yeah. So the first study that I want to talk about, it's called Greater Mindfulness is Associated with Better Academic Achievement in Middle School. So what happened with this study is interesting. They didn't teach mindfulness. What they did was they took students grades 5 to 8, over 2,000 students, and they gave them kind of like a test to measure their amount of mindfulness. So remember, mindfulness is a skill of paying attention to the present moment on purpose. So that includes, the ability to focus, the ability to be aware of what's happening in this moment.
And it's learned with time.
Exactly. So, it's a skill. We always say it's just like reading. It's a skill that has to be learned. So what they did with these 2,000 middle school students is that they used the mindful attention awareness scale to measure their mindfulness. Then what they did is they correlated that mindfulness scale to academic outcomes. So they looked at these students one by one. Where are they on this mindfulness scale, and how are they doing academically? What they found by looking at this is that greater mindfulness correlated significantly with better academic achievements. And that's measured by grade point average and also standardized tests of mathematics and literacy. So greater improvement in academic performance from the prior school year as well. So they saw that those that were more mindful were improving their academics year by year. They also saw that there's better attendance for those that were more mindful and fewer suspensions for those that ranked higher on that or were graded higher on that mindfulness scale. So what they saw, their conclusion was that the relation between mindfulness and academic achievement was similar across demographic characteristics as well. So similar at different age groups, areas, things like that. So it's really great to see these outcomes in, a really well done study, because this is what we're seeing in our classrooms, right? Like we've observed it ourselves. We've heard this kind of feedback from teachers that use Educom Classroom.
And just through the data that we're collecting.
Yes.
Purposefully.
Yeah. It's always nice to see what you observe on your own, like confirmed through science. So.
Yeah. Well, of course you love that.
So yeah, like the thing with science that I just want to point out too is we put a lot of weight on what science tells us. But what science is just an observation. So science isn't like inventing things. It's just describing things that happen. So when we're studying what mindfulness does, we're just watching to see, does it make a difference? Does it not make a difference? If it does make a difference, how so? So we're just describing what we're observing, but in empirical way. So like we have a really specific method for observing this.
It's not all willy-nilly.
Exactly. So yeah, that study is super promising and definitely gives us extra wind in our sails to know that having this Educom Classroom program ready for teachers to use is going to make it easier for them to share mindfulness in the classroom and therefore easier for them to help their students improve their academic outcomes. Now, the second study, this is the one that gets me really excited because in this study, they actually measured brain activity.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah. So the second study is called Mindfulness Training Reduces Stress and Amygdala Reactivity to Fearful Faces in Middle School Children. So what they did with this study was they took a group of middle school students. So there was 40 middle school children that were randomized to either a mindfulness group or a coding group. So they took half of these students, so 20 of the students, and they did 8 weeks of mindfulness training with them. With the other group, at the same time that one half was going to do mindfulness, the other half was going to do a coding class. What they did with these groups is before they started these two different classes, they measured the amygdala response in the brain. So the amygdala is the part of the brain associated with emotion. So especially fearful emotion and anxiousness, anxiety, things like that. So when we're feeling really anxious, or we're feeling fearful, the amygdala reactivity goes up. When that reactivity is going up, that makes it really hard for our brain to think clearly, make good decisions, to learn new things, and to access our memories. So the amygdala response is kind of like a negative, it's like a blocker to learning, essentially, which is why we always talk about how important mindfulness is, because it calms the body and mind. So really it's calming the amygdala so that the brain is more ready to learn, and the centers that are required for learning are all open, free-flowing, ready to be used. So in this study, it's really cool. They took all these students and they put their brain in a scanner and they showed them fearful faces and measured the amygdala's response. So essentially they're measuring how reactive is the brain to these images, how much fear is happening. Now, they obviously recorded all that data. for each of these students. Then they did the 8 weeks. So every day, one group was doing mindfulness training, the other group was doing coding. At the end of these 8 weeks, they remeasured the brains of these children while looking at fearful responses. What they saw with the mindfulness group is that when they were looking at fearful images after these 8 weeks of training, the amygdala response was lowered.
How interesting.
Isn't that neat? So it's like, again, it's kind of something that we observe in our classroom, but it's cool to see that it's actually like physically happening in the brain.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. So what we're seeing here is that since the amygdala response is lowered, it's kind of like students are better able to manage stressors. They're better able to not be reactive when they're faced with this stressful moment, this fearful moment.
Well, and they're not letting their amygdala take over.
Exactly.
They're still thinking with their thinking brain. Mm-hmm. Their prefrontal cortex.
Exactly.
I guess we could say.
Yeah. So it's cool because like that is something that happens with practice, right? The brain has literally changed itself in those 8 weeks so that the amygdala response is lowered. It has learned this new skill of lowered reactivity in stressful situations. Now, in the group that did coding, there was no change. So that proves or shows, and of course, more studies always need to be repeated to be proven absolutely that this is the case. But this is a really cool new study that is showing at the brain level what is being learned through this mindfulness training. Now, one thing that was said in the study that's really important was they said that the thing is, with this mindfulness training, to continue having that sort of reduced amygdala response in fearful moments, the mindfulness training has to continue. They explained that mindfulness is like a workout for the body. If you stop going to the gym, you stop gaining new muscle. You lose that muscle kind of that you've gained. Same thing is true with the mindfulness training. This has to be done every day or close to every day to keep that neural connection strong.
Repetition is key. We've said it so many times. I feel like especially lately on the podcast, but repetition is key.
Exactly. So yeah, these are like 2 really promising studies that show the importance of mindfulness, how it helps academically, and then also how it's actually changing the brain when we're doing this practice.
Now, we are going to link these in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And also, like, if you are one of those people, as many of us are, that has a hard time asking your admin for something like the EduCom Classroom program, these would be awesome articles to like forward to your admin to show them.
Like there is evidence, there is data, there's proof now that this does support learning and academics in the classroom and that it's worth investing in a program that is going to create these outcomes for your students. Also, on that topic, if you aren't sure exactly how to approach your admin and ask them for the EduCom Classroom program, we have a pre-written letter for you in the EduCom Classroom free trial. So when you go to the Start Here theme in the free trial, there's a letter that you can just copy, edit as you want, paste and send in an email to your admin, or it can give you some talking points for how, like, okay, how should I bring this up? You know, what angle should I take when I talk about this if you feel kind of awkward talking to your admin?
I know that's a little bit my history, so just feeling a little awkward.
Yeah.
Asking for things. I've gotten better at it with time, so I feel you guys out there who like, you're like, I don't really know how to bring this up, but I really want to do this.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about this just a little while ago. I was saying I never felt that way. I was always the person that was like, oh, this resource, I want it for my classroom. And I just go to my admin and be like, hey, can I have the money for this? Like, I need to buy this. This is why it's important. And I never felt awkward about it. But I think that might also just be because I was in a science classroom and it was just every year we made our orders for the things that we needed for our science labs and whatever. So I was just kind of trained that like, yeah, we have a budget that's meant to be used. So
yeah. Every time I did go see my admin, they always say yes. So the fear, I don't know where it ever came from.
Yeah.
It's pretty much gone these days. But like, I don't know. I can't tell you.
Yeah. I think it's kind of just that, like, when you're in a new school or when you have a new admin, you just don't know what their reaction's going to be. So it's kind of an unknown. So it makes sense that you feel a little bit awkward about it. But on a side note as well, like, we've talked to lots of principals, and I'm telling you, every single principal I've talked to has said, like, yeah, I'd love for my teachers to be using this program, but I don't want to tell them they have to use it. So it's kind of this funny dance between, like, principals, admin wanting their teachers to ask for the funds for good programs that are important to them, and then teachers aren't sure if they should ask. So, like, both sides want
everyone feels awkward.
Yeah, everyone feels awkward, but also everyone wants good resources for the classroom.
Of course.
So anyway.
It's all about the kiddos.
Yeah. If you're feeling a little bit awkward about asking it, just go into it knowing that whatever you're asking for your classroom is, like you said, for the students. It's to create better outcomes. And that's everyone's goal at the school. So, and if your principal says no, I mean, it's also not the end of the world.
No kidding.
Like, what's the worst that can happen? They say no, or no, not this year, but next year we'll have money for it, or, or no, not right now, but actually, can you give me a little more information? There's nothing terrible can happen by just asking.
So true. So your exit ticket for today is to check out those articles. And you can do that by going to educalm.com/TBE 103 for episode 103. It all rhymes. So educalm.com, that's EDUCALME /TBE 103.
And that's TBE as in the balanced educator. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing this time with us today. If you found this information useful, please share it with a friend or a colleague that you think would find it useful as well. And have an awesome week.